A NHL Insider reveals major changes coming to the Vancouver Canucks, with the Canucks apparently willing to take calls on J.T. Miller. A former captain speaks out on the situation, and there may be another star player on the trade block. We're going to break all this down and more later on this episode. Before we get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching this video. If you're part of the 71.9% that's not subscribed and you're enjoying this free NHL or Canucks content, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll be giving you updates from around the Canucks for the rest of the year into next year. But with that, Griffin, let's just hop straight into the first topic today, and it seems like a never-ending revolving door on the J.T. Miller and Petey situation. But we did get a quote from Nick Kypreos of the Toronto Sun saying, "It sounds like Vancouver Canucks are leaning towards a major roster change as it becomes clearer to management that the current roster, specifically feuding stars J.T. Miller and Elias Pettersson, cannot coexist. Don't be surprised if we start hearing the Canucks are willing to take calls on Miller." Now, this is something that's been flying around for the past what feels like months. Everyone's been talking about this feud between J.T. Miller and Elias Pettersson. We don't know how true this is. We've seen people shut this rumor down. We'll have a quote from a former captain in a moment. But looking at this, if they do go on the route of trading Miller, do you think it's better if they trade Petey?
I'm not too sure. It seems like one of those things where, yes, Miller is a bit older than Petey, but looking at Miller's production and what he is to this team as far as a leadership standpoint, that's part of why you keep him. However, up until recently, it seems like that's kind of shifted. I'm not sure if Miller seems to have that same view in the locker room as he had when before he left. Since he's come back, it seems like things have been a little murky in the locker room ever since, and he might be the cause of that. So as a result of that, it's not only going to be hard to move him from that standpoint because teams are going to have to take him into the locker room knowing that he's a bit tougher. He could be causing problems like he's caused with other teams in the past and Vancouver. But if you trade Petey as well, that's potentially giving away a massive superstar to a team that it could be like with the Toronto Maple Leafs where they trade a superstar and then they go out and they win a cup the following year with that new team. So you want to avoid a situation like that with Petey where you've invested a lot into him, and not only as far as time, but also money and what he's meant to this franchise since they've drafted him. So bringing in Miller was a great move by their part a few years ago, but if they have to lose one of them, seems like JT Miller is the likely one just based on age, based on contract, and based on what the locker room vibe is kind of like as of recently. Seems like when Miller was gone, the vibes were really good. Petey was having the time of his life, and Connor Garland was really excelling as well. Guys were really clicking, and we saw a Vancouver Canucks team that we're kind of used to seeing. But since Miller has gotten back, we haven't really seen that team as of yet. Hopefully they are able to just put this behind them if there is an issue and we can just keep both of them and we can get back on our merry way the way we were last season. But if people are coming out and saying things like this, you have to kind of hope for the best but prepare for the worst. So if the worst to prepare for is JT Miller leaving, it's unfortunate, but if we have to lose one of them, I think I might be okay with losing Miller over Petey. And that's despite saying that I think JT Miller is the ultimate competitor and the ultimate leader. It just would suck to have to lose both of them. And if we have to lose one of them, JT Miller losing would suck, but also understandable.
And I mean, looking at this, we're getting quotes from everyone. It's going from Nick Kypreos, Darren Dreger. We're seeing quotes from Donnie and Dolly. We're seeing quotes from everyone around the league on this situation. My biggest take on this, I do think if the Canucks find their footing, if they get on a winning streak once they get fully healthy, I think a lot of this gets put in the past. But this is putting so much pressure from the media, from fans, from everyone in between on the management and the owners to figure this out. But we do get a good quote coming from ex-captain Bo Horvat on the situation. He said, "It's definitely been blown out of proportion. It's always a tough market that way. Any little piece of information gets magnified in those situations, right? But I mean, that comes with the territory. It comes with play in there." This was talking on the PD and the JT Miller situation. He did go into depth. You can read the article. It was on the bottom from the Hockey Now. It's a great article. And Bo Horvat did talk on the situation. But the biggest thing is right now, both of these players are Vancouver Canucks. I do truly think once they find their footing, this will be in the past. But right now, with the Canucks reportedly taking calls on Miller, it does get even more interesting in this saga. But it doesn't stop there, as we did get a quote, and this was from Donnie and Dolly. This is from Canucks Summaries on Twitter or X, whatever you call it nowadays. He summarized their interview, and it's quite awesome. He went in and said, talking about the Brock extension, the Canucks probably have an internal deadline, and if they don't have an extension done by them, they will trade him. Don't want him to leave for nothing. They seen it happen with Zadorov. They knew they couldn't re-sign Lindholm early, but eventually got to what Zadorov was asking for, and it was too late. Only 3 significant UFA players on the roster right now. Looking at this, Griffin, the biggest thing is, yes, if they're in a playoff spot, they're not going to move Brock. I do think Brock's going to sign with this team as well, but seeing insiders coming out and saying, hey, they don't want to lose him for nothing, and I can't blame them. We've seen Zadorov leave in free agency to join the disgusting Boston Bruins. Hasn't really worked out for him yet, but this is the type of player you don't want to lose in Brock Boeser. Looking at this with the internal deadline, what's your thoughts on, if the Canucks are not in a playoff race by deadline, Brock being traded?
I think they need to throw that internal deadline out the window and toss it in the trash, because at the end of the day, talk about J.T Miller and Petey all you want. This is the Vancouver Canuck that you want to keep at all costs, no matter what. I know I've said it many, many times before that Brock Boeser is the most valuable Vancouver Canuck that we have on this team. Yes, he doesn't total up the points that someone like Petey or J.T Miller does, or even Quinn Hughes, but the goals that he scores are the most meaningful for the Vancouver Canucks. Like we saw in the playoffs last season, he scored a hat trick in a playoff game, carrying us to victory, putting the team on his back. We've seen him jumpstart so many comebacks where he says, hey, follow me into the battle. We're going to get this done and we're going to get the W. That's what he means to this team. And considering all the personal things that he's been through on and off the ice, it just adds even more as to why he is the ultimate Vancouver Canuck and why you need to keep him on this team at all costs. Just when we thought it couldn't get any worse for this Vancouver Canucks team, we've talking about the possibility of trading Miller or Pettersson, 2 of our 4 superstars. You add a third one to the mix where, as if it wouldn't get bad enough, where, yeah, say we trade Brock Boeser, but we keep Miller and Pettersson. Does that situation just suddenly go away? No, it doesn't. And like you touched on, it seems like the only reason this is being talked about as much as it is because the Canucks are struggling. We are not looking like a playoff team right now. We are not even looking like we looked last season, even in a half of a fraction. We are looking like a completely different team. And the reason why this is getting amplified so much is because we're not winning games. If we were winning games, no one would be caring about this. No one would be talking about it. It wouldn't be getting amplified as much as it is. But because we're struggling as much as we are, and like we've just seen there, what this team looks like without Pettersson and as well as without Quinn Hughes, they can't afford to lose any superstars. So any locker room drama that's going on, you can't just get it swept under the rug with a trade and just have that just be shipped out to solve the problem. No, you need someone to come in, mediate the situation, say, hey, we're grown adults. Don't play for the name on the back of your chest. Save for the team on the crest of your front of your jersey. We've said it many, many times already over the past few episodes in regards to this situation. And that's what these guys need to do. Just shut up and play hockey and get back to playing as a team.
And the biggest thing is, looking at Brock, I would not want to move on from him. You can look, you can pause, and you can see that he is a UFA at the end of this season. He's going to ask for a raise. We've seen rumors anywhere between 8.5 to 9.5 million. The biggest thing with this is the cap's going to go up. You're freeing up a bit of space with guys like Pius Suter coming out of the lineup. You still need to sign some other players on this team, even on the back end. Forward's probably going to walk. Brandstrom's a guy you would like to bring back. There's a lot of players that are going to come back and a couple players that might not come back. The biggest thing with me, I think you do keep Brock. If he values himself out, if he's going out and asking for Connor McDavid money, yes, let him walk. If he looks at the team and says, hey, there's no chance I'm coming back, yes, trade him at deadline. But as of right now, with the rumors from Donnie and Dolly, just saying that they have an internal deadline set. If he doesn't sign the extension by then, I don't think the Canucks are going to move on from him. Obviously, I'm not a general manager. A lot of people like to point that in the comments. Because if I was, I would not be sitting here doing this, obviously. But looking from the outside standpoint, this is a huge part of this team. Brock's a huge point. You have Quinn Hughes that's signed with this team for quite some term. You have Petey, you have Miller. They will figure things out, and it all starts with a small winning streak, especially tonight in Seattle. This is a must-win game in my eyes, because if not, these rumors are going to get even worse. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on Nick Kipros saying that they wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks start taking calls on Miller? What's your thoughts on Donnie and Dolly just coming out and saying there's an internal deadline for someone like Brock, and especially if they're not in the playoff hunt? Let us know down in the comments. Right down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.